Welcome back to Psychology of Peace Building. This week I would like to introduce social psychology and some of the research on, if you remember, I talked about intra and intergroup conflict when I introduced the levels of conflict resolution and peace building to you a couple of weeks ago. Groups play a very powerful role in escalating destructive, violent conflict. And our social identity is key to this. What in your workbook is going to help you identify the groups with whom you identify. So for example, I identify as a professor, as a university employee, an educator, a scholar, an author, a writer. These are all groups I identify with. I identify as an American, though I identify as the grandchild of immigrants to this country. So I identify as an immigrant, even though I'm technically not an immigrant myself, but I loved and grew up with immigrants, right? So I very much identify with the group of immigrants. I identify as a woman. I identify as a gifted girl, right? There's all these identities we have. I identify as a global citizen. I identify as an activist who cares about the world, the people of the world. I'm not, whatever. So this is social identity, and I want you to be considering. Now, does that mean that because I identify as a Norwegian American, for example, that I agreed with all my Norwegian relatives about Norwegian culture and the way I should be as a woman or a human being? Of course not. Culture is dynamic and changing all the time with each generation. Many of us take what we like and we leave the rest behind, right? And I'm trying to do that with my cultures as well. But it's really important to know how you identify and which groups have influence in your life. No group can incite me to destructive, violent conflict. I identify, with the Gandhians of the world as a nonviolent activist. I teach peace building, and I'm very educated in all the empowerment tools we can use to avoid violence. If somebody violates my boundaries, I defend myself, but I'm able to do it in ways that don't hurt people. If I was ever in a corner where I needed to take care of myself and it involved hurting another person, I try to stay out of those situations, I've got to tell you, because I know that I have a spiritual identity as well, and I don't want to violate those values. I have never bought into in-out group destructive conflict. Never. Not even in my birth family. I stood apart if that was going on, and I spoke up. In-out groups, the cliques of high school and middle school that like to bully and hurt other people, identify people as outsiders, disgust me, frankly. I think it's the worst of our human nature. Why do we have to do in-out group dynamics? I'm very democratic that way. I want to welcome all and treat everyone equally, and I've pretty much been able to do that in my life. In-out groups empower themselves through hurting other people and excluding other people. So you can see that I'm against that dynamic, but you can see how it's used repeatedly to escalate destructive, violent conflict in the world, declaring, the in-group and justifying all harm and hurt, violence towards outsiders. I tend to hang out with and teach the people who've been hurt by that dynamic and want to create a different, better world, one that I feel good about. I studied, because my first husband became a Buddhist priest, with Japanese Zen master Katagiri Roshi for a decade of my life. And he, would give talks like a spiritual teacher does. And he said the human delusion is that we're superior to any human being and that we're inferior to any human being. That's a delusion. We're all human. We are all human beings together. So I'm introducing you to social psychology so that you understand how it creates destructive conflict. But I want to focus on peace building, the psychology of peace building.